I was telling my family the other day that it's been about more than 15 years now that I've been writing and researching on the RSS. And interestingly, this is the first time that I'm speaking at an RSS forum. So this is a very special moment for me because wherever I have spoken about my research, it has been either at a national or an international conference, uh, and the crowd there, the colleagues there, obviously come with a certain bent of mind. Um, uh, and therefore it is very refreshing for me to speak with all of you today. I am much younger than most of you who have come here today, if not by age, at least by experience. So it's almost arrogant on my part to be able to comment on the Sangh, given that most of you have probably spent a lifetime in the Sangh, and you understand the organization much better than me. You understand Seva much better than me. So if there is anything that I say that may offend your sensibilities, please forgive me for doing so. I come here to learn from you and not so much to tell you about what the Sangh Seva is all about, because like I said, I'm much younger than all of you. With that disclaimer, I would like to begin, and I would like to again thank you from the bottom of my heart for not just turning up here today, not just for inviting me, not just for organizing something like this, but also for reading the book. I realize we are all pressed for time, we all have 101 things to do, but the fact that senior people like you have taken out the time to read it, to engage with it, and to be so appreciative of it, is to me a validation of the fact that the Sangh, above all, is a very generous organization. People have used all kinds of labels for the Sangh. I too have been critical of the Sangh in my work, but that is an overwhelming feeling I come back with every time I interact with any Swayamsevak. Whether it has been with a village Swayamsevak in Kutch of Gujarat, whether it has been speaking to a bunch of young men who have been actively part of the RSS in Jagat Singhpur district, in Ersama block in Odisha, whether it has been in Guwahati when I've interacted with Swayamsevaks young and old. There is this inherent sense of warmth, hospitality and generosity that I have always experienced, and for which I am so grateful to everyone. Given that most of you have read the book already, I thought it is perhaps not a good idea to take you again through the central tenets of my book, because that would be a repetition of what I say in my book, and the other thing also would be, it might seem a bit boring for most of you. So I thought, and going by what Shamaji had spoken to me earlier, I think a better thing to do would be to take you through the journey that I went through while actually writing this book. The book that I see on the table now is a product of, I'm not trying to say it's a product of labor and hard work, because every research scholar goes through this phase. But writing a book about the RSS, when you are not a part of the RSS, and when you are not adhering to the rabid left ideological position, is a very, very difficult uphill task. And therefore, I would like to share that journey of how I went about choosing this topic, what motivated me to write the book. So that is where I am. Before even getting into a little bit about my background and my motivation for writing this book, I would first like to begin by sharing two anecdotes. Okay, one thing that I'm sure Nagarajji shared in jest, but all of us sitting in the room here know that the minute you mention the word RSS or Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh in any context, it invites extremely polarized opinions. Either people love the Sangh or they hate the Sangh. There is no in-betweenness, right? And I want to demonstrate this by sharing two anecdotes with you. So even though I had begun studying the RSS as part of my MPhil in JNU, that was 2005, I had begun researching on the emergence of Hindutva in Assam. So I'll come to that in a bit, but let me first share the anecdote. So after my MPhil, I went into for my PhD also. I decided to study the RSS, and one of my field sites was Gujarat, Kutch, which forms one chapter of this book, right? And I still remember the statement given by one of my colleagues, friends in JNU, and she said, "Are you mad? What is wrong with you? Why would you? It is one thing to write a book on the it is one thing to do a PhD or an MPhil on the RSS with secondary sources, where you do not go and meet people. But are you trying to enter the laboratory of Hindutva, Gujarat?" And this was just after 2002, right? I mean, the memory of Godhra was very much uh, alive in the minds of people. A memory that many deliberately decided not to forget also. But let me not even go there. But this is JNU, right? In the middle of 2000s, and this was the advice that came from a very dear friend of mine. She said, "Have you lost your mind? You are a woman and you are about to enter the lion's den. You will be all by yourself in rural Kutch, and there are these Sanghi fanatics everywhere." And so, of course, and I'll come to my response a little later. So this is one anecdote that I wanted to share with you. And I'm saying this to demonstrate the power of stereotyping, right? Why is it? Why do stereotypes? How powerful stereotypes are, and how powerfully they manifest themselves in day-to-day conversations, in day-to-day everyday life conversations. The other anecdote is much more recent. So when the book was published, I had requested my husband to share the book link with his colleagues. And he has a lot of friends in office who are ardent supporters of the RSS. And one of his colleagues bought the book and recommended to his cousin brother, who is from Odisha, and suggested, "Hey, there is a new book on the RSS, why don't you pick it up?" His immediate response was, "Oh, I know of that book. It's written by a Bengali, right? Some Bhattacharjee. I refuse to read it. One, because she's a Bengali, and two, because it is based on her PhD thesis which she wrote in JNU. Um, so the reason I'm citing these anecdotes to you is because there are stereotypes working on both sides of the wall, right? It's just not one party that has this problem. And here I would like to quote Adichie, the famous Nigerian writer who once very famously said. And then for my undergraduate, so I completed my schooling in Assam and I moved on to Kolkata for my undergraduate education. I went to Presidency College, which at that point of time at least was heavy left-wing bastion. SFI, which is the students' wing of the Communist Party of India, was very, very powerful. And that was my first academic exposure to what the Sangh is, what the RSS is all about. And no surprises that they projected, or they ardently believe that the RSS is the biggest menace that this country has ever faced. They are responsible for inciting communal violence, they participate in riots, they have an anti-minority agenda, and so on and so forth. I was still a student of political science, and so I went on to JNU after that, and things, the gravitas of the Sangh hatred obviously got amplified even more, because JNU, at least when I was studying again, was heavily, left-wing bastion, as they call it, and there was very little space for any form of dissent. Dissent in the form of an intellectual disagreement was not taken very politely. I was fortunate, however, for my MPhil, I decided to work with my professor, Pranay Kanungo, with whom I also went on to write my PhD, who was an outlier of sorts in that environment, but which is again not to malign any of my professors, because at the Center of Political Studies, where I did my MPhil and my PhD and my master's too, professors were very liberal as far as our intellectual positions were concerned. So there was no overt, tangible sort of attempt to stifle up anyone's opinion, but the overall mahal or the environment was not very conducive to write anything, to write about the RSS, leave alone say anything different that was countering the existing narrative. So I was lucky, like I said, to work with Professor Kanungo, who gave me absolute liberty, to pursue my research. And uh, he told me, I remember that conversation we had when he said, you come from Assam, and there is evidence now that a lot of people there are in favor, BJP at that point of time was emerging as the third most important political party, right? This was from the 1990s onward, late 1990s onward. And my professor and I discussed that that seems to be a very interesting, phenomenon, because unlike the other states in India, I don't know if any of you have visited Assam or the Northeast, uh, the rhetoric of Ram or Ayodhya, or the larger sort of discourse that is associated with Sangh and the RSS does not really fly there. It's not very popular, right? Because there are other issues of ethnicity, issues of tribal identity, issues of language, in particular Assamese vis-a-vis Bengali, that predominate the political imagination of people there, right? So, Hindu nationalism or the idea of consolidating the Hindu community is something that is very new to the politics of Assam. At this time, I would also like to, point out that I'm aware of the fact that conceptually there is a huge difference between the BJP and the RSS, right? I mean, I'm not trying to give out the impression that in my mind they are conflated. They are not. They are very different organizations. But that was a curious phenomenon, and I decided to investigate that by, so my assumption was whenever BJP comes to power, right, politically, it's the political outfit of the Hindu nationalist discourse, it's merely the tip of the iceberg, okay, in the sense that the larger groundwork is obviously done by the foot soldiers of Hindutva, who happen to be ardent Sangh supporters, who work selflessly, tirelessly on the ground without any expectations whatsoever. Whether they are full-timers, whether they are pracharas. I had the privilege of meeting Madhukar Limaiji, a very, very senior pracharak in Assam. And he was narrating stories of how he would, spend days at a stretch cycling across, the northeastern, hills. And 1946 is when the first Shakha is established in Assam. This is undivided Assam, even before independence. So you can imagine the kind of dedication and the tirelessness that these people brought to the table. So I was very curious that, what could have possibly happened that actually is now creating a terrain that is welcoming Hindu nationalism as a legitimate political ideology. That led me to research the emergence of Hindutva in Assam. And it was precisely through that research that I discovered the power of seva, right? So the number of, RSS camps that I visited, not camps, but I just happened to visit a lot of shakhas at that point of time. I went and spoke to the functionaries, the Sangh functionaries there, and they, and it wasn't even like they were trying to sort of beat up their drum and talk about it very boastfully. Most Sangh Swayamsevaks that I've met are very, very low profile. They in fact shy away from talking about their, accomplishments of seva work, and very, very humble. So people would just sit me down and say, oh, you know what, when this earthquake happened in 1950, our senior Swayamsevak tell us that this work was done. And then I went back to the archives of organizer and I actually found evidence of the kind of work that was being done by Swayamsevak as early as 1950 when an earthquake had happened in Assam and the flood had, occurred. So that was my first sort of brush with the idea of seva, and I wanted to put, and soon after finishing my MPhil, I worked briefly for a year in the International Federation of Networks, like Shama just mentioned. And I was exposed there to the terrain of disaster relief. And disaster relief, through my MPhil, I had discovered that right from the time, 1955, when the Sangh was established, Bhattacharjee gave a lot of importance to the idea of service, like Nagarajji just pointed out in the introductory remarks. It was followed by Golwalkarji and then Bala Saheb Devras. Seva has always been a very, very important pillar of the Sangh, right? So disaster relief and the Sangh, two interests that I wanted to combine, that's what gave rise to my PhD. And again, there were, the Gujarat earthquake happened in 2001, the super cyclone in Odisha happened in 1999. There were two reports that came out at that point of time. I don't know if you're aware of this. One was the IDRF, one report written about how IDRF funds are actually being, used for furthering Hindutva agenda, for anti-minority propaganda. And there was another report by a civil society group called Avas in the UK. Both were very, very critical of the RSS. And that again got me thinking. So one of the things that I realized, and I would have long conversations with my professor, and we would have so many disagreements. And I would keep telling him that, what's very interesting to me is every time I go out and do my literature review, because that's the first thing that you do as a researcher, right? You try and locate the amount of work that has happened in this area before you start thinking and conceptualizing your own research. I discovered two kinds of books. One set was written by Swayamsevaks themselves, okay, which were highly appreciative of the Sangh, with very little critical analysis of what could have been better. So we've done 10 things good, but could we do 2 or 3 things better? That seemed to be largely absent. I won't say it was completely absent, but it was largely absent. The other set of literature that I encountered was completely dismissive of everything good that the Sangh had done. Right? So here the Sangh was just portrayed as fascist, communal, fundamentalist, anti-minority, and so on and so forth. And most of us are familiar with that literature. Much of my colleagues in JNU have contributed to that literature too. Intellectually, I was very, very upset. Because to me, it seems that it felt like there was a lack of honesty, right, about the way in which the Sangh was being portrayed from both the sides. And I thought, as a researcher, not as an activist, if you're an activist, you have a different stance, you have a different position in life, right? If you are a member of a political party, again, you have a particular agenda that you have in mind. But if you are an academic, you owe to yourself, to society, to your students, to your community of scholars, a certain degree of honesty. That the truth that you discover in the process of doing research may not be something that you agree with, but nevertheless, you have to come to terms with it. Otherwise, you die as an academic researcher then. So for me, that was the motivation of plunging into something at a time when there were very few people willing to even engage with the Sangh. And here I wish to talk a little bit about the methodology that I chose. Sorry, how much time do I have, Shivati?
You can carry on for 27 minutes.
Oh, 27 is very precise. Thank you, very helpful. Okay, so I'll just make a few methodological remarks here, because we are at this idea of integrity and honesty as far as research is concerned. When we teach our students research methodology courses, one of the first things that or what is most important, I think, to communicate is research ethics. Okay? Amongst a variety of different other things, including the idea of confidentiality, protecting the confidentiality of the respondent at hand, taking care of the fact that you do not harm any individual in the process of doing your research. Apart from all of this, one of the most important things that we teach them, not just from a point of ethics, but even from a point of rigor, is triangulation. Maybe some of you are already familiar with the term. A triangulation basically means that you collect data from all kinds of sources and not just stick to one particular set of data that you are comfortable with. So we all have our own biases, and I often tell my students that it's not problematic really to have biases. And one of the first things that I begin my Indian politics class with is I draw a tree on the blackboard. And I say, imagine that you're in a forest, and there is this big tree in the middle of the forest, and each of you are different animals or insects sitting on that tree. Okay? So one of you is a little bird sitting on the topmost branch of the tree. One of you is an ant crawling under that tree. One of you is a monkey jumping around, and so on and so forth. Now tell me, what do you see? If I ask you, what does the forest look like? What will your response be? So the ant crawling on the ground will say the forest is muddy and it's brown in color and there is some grass and so on and so forth. The monkey will probably tell you that, oh, I see trees everywhere, this forest is full of trees. The bird that is right at the top, at the topmost branch, will probably give you the best vantage point because he or she can see the forest much better than the ant sitting at the bottom. So, to cut the long story short, my larger point is each of us come with our own biases, and there is nothing wrong in it, right? So, when I write this book here, part of what I say and part of what part of where my convictions come from is based on the fact that I was born to a particular family with a particular background. I happen to be a woman. I happen to be a Hindu. I happen to belong to a so-called upper caste. Yes, I come from a particular region of the country. I studied in a particular institution that has a certain kind of an ideological baggage. So, I would like to think that all of us are products of the different ascriptive identities that we are born with, that we are conditioned into, and there is nothing wrong about it. But I think the problem begins when you are willing to not climb over or move, climb that empathy wall, using that very powerful term from an American scholar named R.D. Hawkshire, who studies white nationalism, right? It has become very fashionable, well, not fashionable is a bad word, in common mainstream discourse, we love to hate Trump and we love to hate the Republicans for a variety of reasons. But here was one scholar who writes this book called Strangers in Their Own Land, and she's genuinely trying to understand why is it that a group of people, white Americans, who are often accused of being very, very intolerant of African Americans, of Muslims, of Asians, why is their opinion, why is it important to acknowledge and understand where they come from? And she uses this very beautiful term called empathy wall. So for me, the larger point again was, irrespective of the baggage or the biases that you carry, it's important to climb that empathy wall, to genuinely understand where your respondents are coming from. And to do that, if you continue to use your own filters, your own understanding of what is right vis-a-vis what is wrong, then you lose the story. So therefore I argue that seva needs to be understood in its own idiom, in its own vocabulary. Words like seva, you cannot equate them very flatly with a concept like charity, for instance, or a concept like zakat in Islam, right? Every religion talks about giving, but even within that commonality, there are differences. And these are not just, it's not just semantics that we are talking about. There is a certain worldview associated with these categories, with these terms. And the same thing applies to seva. So if you have to understand seva, you need to understand the cultural universe that it is coming from. You cannot use that secular rationalist filter and say, hey, you know what, this is all instrumental, in order to just get more supporters for Hindutva. It is just another tactic to get greater support for BJP. The minute you do that, you are losing sense of, or you do not have a more nuanced sense of reality. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. So with regard to methodology, then data triangulation is what I have honestly tried to pursue. I have tried to look at sources by RSS scholars themselves. So Shamaji and I were discussing Sheshatriji's book about RSS, A Vision in Action, is of course one of the best books perhaps written about the seva activities of the Sun. I looked at Bhattacharjee's Bunch of Thoughts. I looked at Malini Bhattacharjee's book, and then several others. I also looked at a lot of scholars who are not liked by the Sun, right? So if you have read the review in Swarajya magazine, one of them talks about how the author seems to be in a dilemma of sorts because she's still stuck. Her tools of analysis are drawn from Ramchandra Guha, I've drawn from Christoph Chapter, all of whom are heavily prejudiced. I do not wish to make a comment on whether they are prejudiced or not, because they are very senior scholars. I'm just taking baby steps into academia. But I would definitely say that I think Swarajya gets me wrong when they're trying to say, yes, there is a dilemma that I'm trying to deal with, but I think Swarajya gets it wrong when they comment that and the tools of analysis are what I borrow from these so-called prejudiced scholars. There may be several things that I do wrong in the book, but one thing that I can be happy about is the fact that I have tried my best with utmost honesty to look at multiple sources as far as texts are concerned. Now, the third or the second most important aspect of data collection is, of course, fieldwork. Right? You may be reading hundreds of books and hundreds of other pamphlets and documents and looking at organized archives, and you can be done with all of that, but unless you go out and really speak to people on the field, you really do not understand. And it's a bit arrogant to presume that you know what beneficiaries think of the sun, right? So that's why I conducted fieldwork. Even for my MPhil, I had conducted fieldwork, but Gujarat and Odisha were my field sites for PhD thesis. Interestingly, and I go back now to the anecdote that I had begun with, again, the problem of the single story. Somebody called it the lion's den, right? Gujarat being a laboratory of Hindutva, quote unquote. The kind of hospitality I received in the villages in Kutch was absolutely unprecedented, unimaginable. I have never felt more safe as a woman in India. In those villages, I would travel there all by myself. I would meet VHP Karyakartas, I would meet Seva Bharati Karyakartas, I would meet young men, I would meet old men, I would meet young women, young children. All of them accepted me as one of their own. Many of them who were a little senior in the Sangha scheme, and they were much more educated, obviously knew that I came from JNU. And they knew what JNU stands for. But can you imagine the kind of generosity it would take to realize that this person who's come here to collect data may not be writing good things about us, and yet you welcome them with open arms. You take out the best bedsheet for them. You lay down, get out the best chair that you have in your house. With good intentions, had warned me about being careful in Gujarat. Obviously, did not know this side to the RSS. Just like the friend, my husband's colleague's friend who refused to read my book, does not realize that there are people in JNU too who probably think differently. There are scholars out there, professors out there, who again, like to use my own words, are not driven by certitude and believe that truth lies somewhere between the black and white. I would like to end, and I would like to take more questions, maybe in the question answer round, because I feel like I'm just talking at you. But I would like to end again with R.D. Hawkshire's very interesting quote on the empathy wall. There are actually two passages that I've picked out. One is, an empathy wall, she describes, is an obstacle to the deep understanding of another person. One that can make us feel indifferent or even hostile to those who hold different beliefs, or whose childhood is rooted in different circumstances. And the other more powerful quote is as follows. We on both sides wrongly believe that empathy with the other, quote unquote, the other side, brings an end to clear-headed analysis, when in truth it's on the other side of the bridge that the most important analysis can begin. I would like to end by saying that I think as a teacher, I've been teaching for the last 6 or 7 years at Azim Premji University, and while I'm talking about Azim Premji University, I must also add that I've been very fortunate because the writing of this book actually happened at Azim Premji University and not in JNU. JNU is where I did my PhD. Azim Premji University again, unfortunately, is perceived by a lot of scholars and people outside as being again a mini JNU of sorts, which is extremely illiberal, which is extremely intolerant. But again, as you Cambridge University, has all kinds of motley group of people. There are people there specifically about the sun. There may be people who are absolutely anti-sun. There may be people like us who are somewhere in between. There will be people like us who absolutely love the sun. I feel very fortunate because our Vice Chancellor has been extremely supportive of the book, the project. I've had very good conversations with Anurag Gebhard, my VC, with Giridhar, who's our Giridhar, who's our COO. They have always been super supportive of helping not just me but every colleague out there to pursue their intellectual positions with utmost integrity. Uh, so coming back to my identity as a teacher, I've been teaching for the last 6 years, 6.5 years, almost 7 years now. And more than a researcher, I think I increasingly have begun to identify more with the identity of a teacher. My grandfather also used to be a teacher. I come from a family of teachers. My grandfather and his brothers were also teachers, all taught Sanskrit and philosophy. And I think that is something that continues to motivate me now. That as a teacher, more than a researcher, you owe a responsibility to your students, to society at large, to say your truth as honestly as you can. And that is what I have tried to do. I have tried to say my truth with the best of intentions and the honesty, the best of honesty that I can bring to the table. Thank you very much.